Hello, this is Sabina at Cross Keys Crafts. Today's video, I'm recording this beginning of March. This is my third project and it's going to be my second card for the Cardmaker of the Year competition. So I won't be posting this until after the closing entry date, which is end of April. But I'll record that today, obviously, to get this done, to send this in. Because I'm doing mostly some sort of die cutting and decoupaging on the one card that I probably will have posted by then, which is my Frida Kahlo card, and I've also done more die cutting on my other paper project. I thought this project, because the competition company, they want you to show as many techniques as you can, or at least different techniques. I decided to mainly do some stamping on this one and some stencil work, so this is my main focus. And when I thought about which stamps I'm going to use, at first I thought maybe I go for Lavinia. I really love Lavinia stamps, but I know that many people who have taken part in the competition in the past have used Lavinia, so I thought I'd go for my second favourite company, or definitely in the top two, which is Visible Image, and they have got these great stamps. And this is actually the first stamp I bought of them, and this is the stamp that caught my eye when I first saw it. Literally, the eye caught my eye because I think it's amazing. And so when I looked through my stash of my visible stamps today, Visible Image stamps, I thought, yeah, I'll go for this one, because it really draws in your attention and it catches you. So I'm going to work with this today. I had quite a few ideas, and originally my ideas were based on another stamp I wanted to use, which was the daffodil, but as I went for this today, so I have to check what I'm doing with the format. But my main idea was to do some masking, some ink blending, and some stencil spritz lift technique. And then I'm going to place this on a background where I'm showing some more techniques and some more media, because I want to do this actually like a mixed media card. I'm just getting into mixed media. I thoroughly enjoy it, so I thought I'd just throw everything at this card. So, but enough of the talking. What I have done so far is I'm using this Gina K masking magic, which allows you to mask something and to stick this down. This is a low-tech sticker paper, but if you don't have this, you can also use some post-it tape or some normal copy paper. That is fine. This just is nice for when you do some ink blending. When I ink blend over this, I don't want this to move though, sorry, the ink to be removed. So I'm using my Spectrum Noir alcohol proof die. You can also use some StazOn. That's worth doing, because if you use some water reactive ink and you ink blend over it, that will smear into the ink around it. So just that as a little tip. So what I'm going to do off camera now, I've stamped this very lightly because I'm not bothered what it looks like. It's just to give me the shape. And I'm going to cut around this, or I'm even trying to tear this, because I want this to be a bit uneven. And then I'm going to stick this down on my piece of cardstock, which, by the way, is a heavyweight mixed media paper. I'll check in a second. Oh, it's 300 GSM. So if you've got watercolor paper, that would work as well for this media, for this card. So I have torn the image out. It tore quite nicely, this masking magic. And I've stuck this down on the sheet. This sheet is actually bigger than my card will probably be, but I want to work on a bigger scale, and then I can always cut it down afterwards. And I've placed it on the top here, so I have got space for the sentiment underneath. So for my first technique, I have got my water reactive inks. These are the Elements by Lavinia stamps in Blue Lagoon and Dark Denim. And I've got my Harmony by Spectrum Noir in the Crushed Velvet and the Fuchsia. I wanted to stay in one colour family, so I chose these blue tones and then the pink a bit as to go with the purple, really, to sort of one sort of cold colour family. I could imagine having that in brighter colours, almost like their packaging, but I just decided to go for these colours. But any colours are fine as long as they are water reactive for this technique. So all I need to do now is to apply the ink heavily. You want a thick coat to actually see the effect. I'm just using my blending brushes, and I'm just going to do it randomly. I'm not really fussed. At this stage, I'd really like to play around and see where my playing takes me. And it doesn't even have to be perfect, because by the time you've used your stencil over the top, even if it's not perfectly blended, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to stop here the camera, and I'm going to do this off screen not to bore you with my ink blending, and then I'll come back to show you what I've done. So for my stencil lift technique, I have chosen this stencil here because I would like to contrast it with the more geometric stencil for the background of this panel that I'm going to cut down. And I thought this sort of mandala style would go nicely with the eye. And it's got a lot of, or enough open space, it's not too intricate, and that is great for the technique. I've also got my water bottle here, that's good for spraying. I've got a bit of toilet tissue here, or you can use kitchen towel obviously, or any other cloth, just in case you need to mop something up. So I'm just on the side here, I've got another piece of paper. I'm just going to mist my stencil on that. You can do it above a bin if you wanted to, but I'm just doing it on the side here. And I'm mostly just misting it, trying it not to be too wet. You don't want any puddles on, big puddles anyway. I'm not sure if the camera picks that up, so mine is quite wet. If it's too wet, you can always dab it off and start again. Mine collects a bit in the middle, but I think that'll be fine for the technique. So what I'm doing is I'm going to lay it over the card, let it down, and just let that sink into the paper. So, and now I'm going to take my toilet paper and just press it down a little bit. You can already see that some of the ink is coming off where the water basically dissolves the ink. So, and then if it worked, you can just put a finger on it and just lift it a bit on the corner to see whether it's reactive, and it's reacted very nicely. So the important thing is that you don't shift it when you take it off. So again, I'm holding it at the bottom and I'm just peeling it off like this. So, and it doesn't look like much at the moment, but if I just try not to put that on, if I just go over this like this, you can see the motif appears a bit more. And I'm going to heat set this now with my heat tool, but you can also leave it to air dry. This will even come out more, and that's the reaction you want. Don't know if you can already see that, so I'm going to do that off screen again. Okay, so this is more or less dry, and you can see the lovely technique there, and the motif come through really nicely. So I'm going to peel the mask off now. If you want to do more than one card, you can reuse this. And it has seeped a bit underneath. That was actually when I brushed it, it came apart, but it doesn't matter by the time I've stamped over it. So it's that if you want to reuse that, put it aside, put it on some release paper, and I'm going to stamp on this later. I'm going to leave this now just to make sure it's going to be 100% dry, because I want to heat emboss my sentiment on here later. Just forgot. Oh yeah, another little tip. If you find your paper warps when you use your heat tool, just heat it up from the other side as well, and then that nearly keeps it flat. So that'll do me nicely. By the time I've cut it down and glued it down, it will be fine. But I'm going to set this aside now. I'm going to set this up now for my background. Hello, it's the next day and I have been busy crafting. I have partially filmed my crafting and I deleted most of it because a few things happened on the way and I changed my mind about a few things. First of all, you can see double here because I started this whole cardigan, the top layer, for two reasons. One was I used black embossing powder for the eye, but when I heated it, and I heated it from the back first, which sometimes is helpful because it doesn't spray the black embossing powder away, but the embossing powder ended up being all matte, and I used my embossing pen and I went over it again and tried to emboss it again, but the same thing happened. I don't know whether it's the cardstock here, but then I remembered you don't have to use black embossing powder if you want to have black embossing. You can stamp with your black ink and then just emboss with a clear. So this is what I'm going to do this time. So I restarted the whole process, but I thought I'm not going to film this again. The technique is the same for the background. So I've done my stencil spritz lift here. The other thing I only thought about when, after I'd done this, I really like the embossing here, is I'd completely forgotten that I wanted to use some strips with sentiments that I've already prepared. I'll find them in a moment to show them to you. So this sentiment would not work with this card anyway. I'm not binning this. It will go in my stash and I will reuse it because non-card makers will not realise that this is messed up. But as I'm making this for a competition, I want to restart this. The other thing, and I mentioned that in the video footage that I still saved, is I wanted to have something in the background, and originally I had planned a slimmer panel with a different stamp, and obviously with the eye being that wide, on a 5x7 card, and I didn't want to make it bigger because my other card will be slightly bigger. There wasn't much left of a background. So what I created here, and that was a lot of mess, and although I'm quite pleased with the sort of grungy look of this, I realised if I cut this down to 5x7, you can't see much of it anyway. So I just decided to go with a plain matte, just of black. I think sometimes less is more, so this is why I started again. So, and the other thing I have done here, and you can see that originally I thought, and you could see me, I just tore the mask like this. But to be honest, I don't like the finish on this. So I cut my mask smaller and just stayed within the black here. So that will all be hidden and all this splats here will be on the coloured background. This is actually quite sticky as well. So it is not a good result, but as I said, I'll deal with that at a later date. So that's all I've done, and yeah, so I'm going to show you how I continue with this now. One thing I forgot to mention is I have changed the inks here slightly. I've used the mermaid instead of the dark denim because I thought the dark denim was actually too dark and I quite like the mix with the green in this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to peel this off, the mask off. So as I said before, you can reuse this. So, and I'm now using my anti-static powder on the whole bit, especially here because it might have just a little bit of residue from the glue that held it down. That's the other problem with the black embossing powder. You can see any residue, any spray, whereas with a clear one, it's not too bad normally. So I've now got my eye here, and I'm going to position that on the bit I've got here on the mask. That looks okay. Make sure it's sort of straight on the card as well. I'm just moving this over. Sorry, I'm just lifting the camera a bit, so if I can. My stand is not too good, so I don't hit the camera with my stamping platform. And now I'm going to ink it up. That is obviously off screen. Let me just move this over so you can see it a little bit. And if you've got a good ink pad, that will be wet enough to take the clear embossing powder. So I've got my homemade pressure tool, which is just a door knob or a drawer knob with just a piece of felt underneath. Yeah, I need to ink it up a bit more. It's not enough on that edge. Obviously, with it being sort of solid bits there, you want to have a good coverage. And that's why it's good to use a stamping platform, so you can go over it again. There we go. So now I can pour the clear embossing powder over it. Just taking this out quickly. Giving it a good coverage. And then that's the advantage of having the clear embossing powder or any embossing powder in the boxes. I can now just tip the residue back in. So I'm going to put the lid on, because what I did earlier with the black one, I accidentally aimed my heat tool into the box and it sprayed all over the desk. So I've got a brush here, because I can see I've got a bit of embossing powder here where I don't want it. Maybe the ink was still a bit wet from earlier. I can't get it all off without taking it off the bit there. Just giving that a slight tap over the bin. But as it's clear, it should not be too much of a problem. So I'm going to heat set this now off camera, and then I'll show you the finished result. So there is my heat embossed image. I'll leave that to dry a little bit, but I'm sure now that the black ink is trapped underneath, and I can colour that in a moment. And any sort of residue, when you first put the heat tool on it, sometimes the embossing powder sprays and is sort of shot away. Because it's clear, I've got a bit on the edge there, but I'm probably cutting that away anyway. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to wait for this to cool now, and then I'm going to show you how I'm colouring it. So I've got an old acrylic block here that I use to blend colours on, or dyes on, and I'm just using the same colours I have got on here. So we've got the crushed velvet, the fuchsia, this is the blue lagoon, and this is the mermaid. And I'm just putting a bit of ink on, and then I'm adding a bit of water. I'm just taking this out of the way so it doesn't react on there. And now I've more or less got watercolours that I can use with a brush to just add to the iris here. And I'm just doing this very randomly. Because I just want to colour this in and just create some interest. And don't hesitate to put some pinks into the eyes. There could be a reflection from something. Adding a bit more at the top there. A bit of purple, although the pink actually mixed with the blue. So it's very random. And I let those run into each other. The only thing I'm avoiding is this bit here, which is the reflection. Probably colour that in. Yeah, and they blend really nicely. I just add another bit of pink there because I really like that. So basically use them like watercolours, and then you've got this look. thinking whether I should just take the white off just a little bit. So I'm just thinking whether I should just, so you can't see what I'm doing here on my scrap paper, just a hint of the blue just to take the edge of the white there, because it does look a bit harsh. So an almost dry brush, just going over that, and that takes the edge of the white a little bit. There you go. So I'm leaving that to dry now, and that's all I need to do as far as colouring is concerned. So I now need to more or less cut this to size. As I said, I want to mat that on a 5x7 card, so I need this to be slimmer. And what I'm going to do though is I'm going to tear the edges. So I've got my metal rulers. I've got this straight on my mat because that gives me an idea. I want to have a bit of space on either side of the eye, and I'm basically aligning my ruler on my grid, the top here, and you can't see the bottom, but it's sort of straight. And also make sure it's straight with your stencil if you've got a certain geometric pattern. I'm just starting at the top. I'm just pulling it up whilst holding the ruler down. That means I'm not going further than I wanted to. I'm just doing it bit by bit. All depends on the cardstock you're using, how nicely it tears, but I'm really pleased with this. So I'm going to do this all the way around now. I always measure in the meantime, so I know now that this is, let me just show you, this is just over 5 inches, so I need to take another good piece off. And once I've decided on the width of the basic of the frame, basically of the frame on the side, I then know how much to tear off at the top and the bottom to get an equal border. So I have torn around the edges and I'm really pleased with the look of this. I just decided though, because the clear embossing powder is quite shiny, I'm going to use my clear Wink of Stella and I'm going to apply this without pumping it. It's got enough sparkle on it, just over the bits here that I've just coloured in, and also this bit. I think it would be really nice just to add a bit more of interest. Don't know if you can see that. I think that's really nice. So to decorate it, I have already created these strips here. This is my latest toy. Just want to show you this briefly without giving a full giving full instructions. This is the We Are Memory Keepers word punch board. What it is, you have got letter punches. They work like normal punches, but you can align them in this board here, and you can also do them closer together by just cutting every other letter, and then you take these out and then align these in between, and you put in a strip of paper like this, and then you just, by pressing down, you can punch the letters out. And I really love this gadget. It's not cheap, it costs about £30, but I've just treated myself to the capital letters as well. These are all lowercase, but I think these will be really great for all sorts of projects. So I have chosen to put on this card inspire, create and craft. In this order, actually: craft, create, inspire. I think that is really a lovely theme. I just came up with this when I was playing around with these. So I'm going to cut these to size. You can see the width here on the top is determined by the punch board. You can't change that, but I left a bit more space at the bottom. So I'm going to cut these to size, but I'm also going to put the mat underneath, because I think I want these with the edge on the mat rather than on the edge of the card. And the other thing I'm going to do, and I'm not going to film that for you, I think I'm going to put these up on some foam pads. I've actually got some black foam pads. I'm going to link to them below. They're from Craft Stash, and I think they would be really good behind this. So just to raise these a little bit up, and then you can read the words because you've got the lovely coloured background behind it. So yeah, I think this will look really good, and I'll just show you the finished product in a moment. I just thought before I show you the finished card, I might actually show you this as a little tip. Because this cardstock is now a little bit bent, I like to use red tape to glue this down. And rather than trying to then find the right corner, making sure it's equal, I just use a bigger piece of cardstock which I can then cut to size afterwards. I find it so much easier, so even if it's not quite straight, I can still then cut it to be straight, and rather than sort of juggling with it and then not being happy with the finished result. So yeah, and as I said, red tape is good for wobbled cardstock. My apologies for keeping on saying I'm going to show you the finished card and that I'm popping in with a few more tips, but I just wanted to show you how I put the pads here behind the letters, or the strips. I just cut them apart with my scissors here, just cut them in strips whilst they're still on the release paper. I just put them on. I avoided the F because that's really close to the edge. So, and from the other side, that looks fine and you can't really see them. So here, as promised, is the finished card. I decided to recut this Inspire and use the wider font. I think this is really nice, and I backed this one on white cardstock and then propped that up as well. And yeah, I'm really pleased with this. It's not what I had originally envisioned, but very close to it. And I actually like the fact that I don't have a busy background as well. I think this is really nice, and the message is a lovely message for this competition. So yeah, I hope you like this card too. If you do, you might want to give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel to see more of what I'm creating, I'd be very happy about that. And I'll see you soon.